Welcome everyone. I'm Richard Screeton and I'm Deputy Director for Alumni Engagement here at the university. We're delighted to have so many of you here for our annual Cockcroft Rutherford Lecture this evening, hosted by our President and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dame Nancy Rothwell, and delivered this year by Mr. David Nott. Some housekeeping notices to begin. Please may I ask that you turn off or turn on to silent your mobile phone. We're not expecting a fire alarm test during the lecture this evening, so if the alarm does go off, please follow a member of staff or an events ambassador to the nearest exit. Tonight's lecture is being recorded and live streamed on the internet, so hello and welcome to those of you watching at home. And if you use Twitter or Instagram, you can use the hashtag UOMCR18 for tonight's event. I'll now hand over to President and Vice-Chancellor Dame Nancy Rothwell to introduce Mr. Dave Nott. I hope you enjoy the event and I look forward to discussing your thoughts at the reception afterwards. Thanks very much.
So thank you, Richard, and a very warm welcome to you all to the annual Cockcroft Rutherford Lecture. And it's wonderful to see over 600 here tonight and many more watching at home. This event honours Sir John Cockcroft, an alumnus of the university, and Lord Ernest Rutherford, a former member of staff, for their outstanding and Nobel Prize-winning achievements during their time here at Manchester. They're both a very important part of the rich history of this university, and I'm delighted that members of the Cockcroft family are here tonight. So today we continue to undertake research into fundamental discovery, discoveries that we don't know what the applications will be as yet. But we are also proud that our research has real-world impact beyond academia. We aim to be at the forefront of research for solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems, seeking to be a global force for positive change. From healthcare to climate change, international trade to cohesive communities, we face up to major challenges. In a few moments, I'll briefly describe our research beacons, which are about discoveries that are interdisciplinary, that involve collaboration, and that involve also cross-sector partnerships, both within the United Kingdom and internationally. Our work is aiming to improve the health of people all over the world. Our research in cancer, conducted at the university, led to better outcomes for people with many forms of the devastating disease. We're one of only 2 major centres supported by Cancer Research UK, with over £40 million over the next 5 years. Professor Rob Bristow, a leading cancer specialist, has just joined us from Toronto to lead Manchester Cancer Research Centre and to develop further our cancer strategy. We were awarded nearly £29 million for a biomedical research centre, the only comprehensive centre outside the South East, and this will help us even more to link to the National Health Service and to apply our findings, something which is extremely important in Manchester at the present time as the only part of the United Kingdom where the health budget is devolved to Greater Manchester. We're also committed to improving the environment. Our research into climate change has led to climate adaptation strategies in 11 cities across Europe. Over 350 organisations per annum use our online tool for assessing the impact of green space in urban areas, and our expertise is sought by businesses looking to reduce their carbon footprint, with organisations in over 70 countries using our carbon calculator, with estimated benefits so far of over £450 million. We're looking at challenges even beyond the planet. Our Jodrell Bank Observatory is the international headquarters of the Square Kilometre Array, which aims to answer some of the biggest questions about the universe. The university is committed to promoting public benefit in all we do. Social responsibility remains of critical importance to the university, and we continue to be one of the only universities to have social responsibility as one of our 3 core goals alongside research and education. Some of the signature programs as part of social responsibility were created to address social challenges where Manchester can make a significant impact. Just a few examples, these include addressing inequalities in Greater Manchester, working together with public, private and third sector organisations to address some of the most significant issues of equality and fairness in our region. Ethical Grand Challenges enables all of our undergraduates to address some of the most profound challenges: sustainability, social justice, workplace ethics. And this year it was attended by over 5,000 undergraduate students simultaneously. Equity and Merit Scholarships. Some of you here are already supporters of these, and thank you very much indeed for that. For those of you who don't know about the Equity and Merit Scholars, this is a flagship programme which identifies and attracts the very best master's students on campus and distance learning from the most disadvantaged backgrounds in some of the poorest countries in Africa. And they are able to undertake courses that they simply wouldn't have available in their home country, and they're fully paid for. Now in its 11th year, over 200 scholarships have been awarded to these exceptional individuals, and many of them are following outstanding careers in their home country. Just last year, over 1,400 alumni actively involved in volunteering, for example, on careers panels, mentoring our students. There are over 100 alumni volunteers across New York, San Francisco, Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore, Toronto, London and Paris, hosting students as part of our global graduate scheme. Over 600 of our staff and alumni are part of our school governance programme, particularly working with schools in less advantaged areas and impacting to date on 275,000 school students. £18 million was donated last year by alumni and friends. Over 1,000 cyclists are supporting sustainable travel. £230,000 was raised for charities by our students. And over 400 student societies reach out to our local and global communities. Particularly relevant to tonight's lecture, this is the 10th year of our Humanitarian Conflict Response Institute, now grown to become one of the most significant institutions for humanitarian teaching and research in the UK and worldwide. Its influential researchers are also accomplished practitioners and have a global impact far beyond the institute. Together with UK Med, a non-government organisation that develops and deploys volunteer clinicians and health professionals to support international emergency medical response, the HCRI has responded to disasters and epidemics across the world. It has long-standing collaborations with humanitarian organisations such as Save the Children, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, the Mines Advisory Group, Tata Institute for Social Sciences, and Project Trust. All of these are very close to the heart of our speaker today. David Nott is one of the UK's most respected and inspiring surgeons, and recognised on the global stage for his humanitarian work. David is, of course, one of our alumni, graduating with a medical degree from the University of Manchester, and then gaining fellowship of the Royal College of Surgeons in 1992. He's been a consultant surgeon at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital for 22 years, where he specialises in general surgery, but he also performs vascular and trauma surgery at St Mary's Hospital and cancer surgery at the Royal Marsden. He's an authority in laparoscopic surgery and the first surgeon to combine laparoscopic and vascular surgery. But most remarkably, for the last 24 years, David has taken unpaid leave each year to work with aid agencies such as Médecins Sans Frontières, the International Committee of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, and Syria Relief. He's provided surgical treatment to the victims of conflict and catastrophe in, and this is probably not a complete list, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Ivory Coast, Chad, Darfur, Yemen, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Haiti, Iraq, Pakistan, Libya, Syria, Central African Republic, Gaza, and Nepal, not places most people would choose to travel to. As well as treating victims of conflict and catastrophe and raising hundreds of thousands of pounds for charitable causes, David teaches advanced surgical skills to local clinicians and surgeons when he's abroad. In London, he teaches surgical training for the austere environment courses at the Royal College of Surgeons. He has changed countless lives with his skill, his vast experience, and his knowledge. In 2015, David and his wife Ellie established the David Nott Foundation, a UK-registered charity which provides surgeons and medical professionals with the skills they need to provide relief and assistance in conflict and natural disaster zones around the world. As well as providing the best medical care, the David Nott Foundation surgeons will train local health care professionals, leaving a legacy of education and improve health outcomes. The Foundation undoubtedly benefits from David's passion for advancing the best in surgical research, practice and teaching, as well as his commitment to helping vulnerable people in some of the most dangerous and disadvantaged places in the world. We were delighted in 2015 to present David with an outstanding Alumni Award for his humanitarian work, and it's a great pleasure to welcome him back to campus this evening. I should just say the nature of David's work is that a few of the photographs and one video include some scenes that some of you might find a little distressing. He will warn you when they're coming up, and if those of you watching at home have children with you, please be aware that there could be some pictures and one video that they might find a little upsetting. We're very proud that David is an alumnus of this university and very privileged that he's agreed to give this year's Cockcroft Rutherford Lecture. Thank you. David.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. It's a delight to be back in Manchester. So I'm going to get on with it straight away, really. It's true, I do work at these three hospitals in London, but for 25 years or so, I've worked around the world. Changed my title from consultant surgeon to war surgeon, and I've worked for many aid agencies. I was a medical student with St Andrews. I've got the tie on today to prove it, and also in Manchester. And one of the best days of my life really was qualifying as a doctor with my mum and dad here. They're no longer here, I'm afraid. But the other most important part I need to say is that I got married to Ellie. But I was a surgical registrar at Manchester Royal Infirmary just down the road, and it was a wonderful place to work at. I used to live in this little room up there with the resident surgical officer, and it was a really wonderful job. And then halfway through one evening when I was sitting there, my dad phoned up and said, "David, I want to take you to go and see a film." I said, "What film, Dad?" Because my father was a consultant orthopedic surgeon in Rochdale, and he came over and said, "Well, I'm going to take you to see a film. I'm going to take you to this film. I'm going to take you to see The Killing Fields." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I want you to see it because I saw it last week and I want you to see it because it could be life-changing." And so I went to see it, and it certainly was. For me, it was a huge impact. It was about war. It was about friendship. It was about how this man was pleading for the life of his friend and how he saved his life. He was a journalist, and he did a wonderful job. And towards the end of the film, the Dith Pran, who was the Vietnamese correspondent, was finally found by Stephen Schanberg in a hospital, ICRC field hospital in Cambodia. And I was absolutely stunned by this film, and I thought, right, something happened. I went to see it the following day, and I suddenly realized myself, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to become a humanitarian surgeon, and I want to work abroad, and I want to go and help people. That's what I'm going to do. So I waited until I became a consultant surgeon, and I became a consultant surgeon at Charing Cross Hospital in the early 90s. And following on from that, I was watching the television and realized in Bosnia there was a certain crisis going on there. And watching it every day with media streaming in, I saw a picture of a man who'd lost his daughter because his daughter went to a hospital and there was no surgeon there. So I thought, right, I'm going. So the following day, I made a telephone call to Médecins Sans Frontières, and I said, "Will you take me?" And they said, "Of course we can. We'll take you to Bosnia." And so I went back to my hospital and said, I'm really sorry, but I've got to go. And they said, well, you can't go. I said, I'm sorry, but I really do have to go. And the person I was working with said, well, if you go, you may not have a job for you when you come back. I don't care. I have to go. So I did, and I went off to Sarajevo with MSF and also the International Committee of the Red Cross, and ended up going, see here, a young person there, this is the Sniper's Alley, and ended up in this hospital. Now, this is the hospital called the State Hospital, and this is what it was like in about 2 years ago, but this is what it was like when I was working there. It was called the Swiss Cheese Hospital because it had so many holes in it. And it was being hit all the time. And I can remember working in this hospital, and we used to work underground, and the hospital would shake every now and again. And it was really targeted. We had no electricity sometimes. If the electricity went off, a man with the generators went off, and a man with a wheelbarrow would come in with a load of batteries and hold up a big lamp. And we'd operate like that, really. And very cold, and we know now for trauma surgery, you need to be very warm when you do trauma surgery. You become hypothermic, then unfortunately you have very poor outcomes. But at the time we didn't really know this, and so many of our patients didn't unfortunately survive. We had little blood products as well, and we were trying against the odds really to save people's lives. And people forget, you know, how many, we hear about the wars today and everything else, but really there were lots and lots of civilians killed and people wounded at that time. Following on from that, I had the bug. I came back and I really wanted to go again. I thought this was fantastic. So I went with the ICRC to Kabul and was there with the ICRC field hospital in Kabul and really met a guy who was, again, to change my life. This is the senior surgeon in Kabul. Now he was a senior Red Cross surgeon and he could do literally anything. He could operate on any part of the body and do it really well. So he taught me for a period of 3 months. And by the end of it, I came back, and I was the surgeon I wanted to train for, because we all know now in the UK and everywhere in Europe that you're very super specialised. If you do, you know, a job, you're a colorectal surgeon, you don't go into the upper gastrointestinal tract, you never go into the brain, you never go into the vascular structures, you never do anything like that. But if you're on your own in a field hospital, you really need to know how to do everything. And you need to know how to do everything really well. And you need to be really an expert in doing things like neurosurgery, hand surgery, orthopedics, general surgery, urology, obstetrics, vascular surgery, all these sort of specialties. You need to be really good at it. And so I thought, right, well, I am now a proper doctor. This is what I really, really want to do. And I had these rose-tinted spectacles on, which unfortunately came off when I went off to Sierra Leone in 1999. I worked in the Connaught Hospital in Freetown when the Revolution United Front were coming in, and they were trying to stop people from voting. And the way they did that was to amputate people's hands. So I was there for probably 6 to 8 weeks. All I was doing was refashioning stumps. And I realized how terrible this was, man's inhumanity to man. And I gave my camera to a friend of mine. I said, you know, it's difficult for me to go out, but can you go out and just take some pictures of what it's like? So this was my outpatient. So you can see here, everybody queuing up with amputated hands. And he went outside, and it was very, very dangerous. You see some tracer bullets being across, utterly out of control. And you'd never thought, I would never thought that somebody could walk down the street with a machete. But what happened last year, when I was on call at the Westminster in my hospital at St. Mary's, this is what we had. We had these 3 people walking down the street, and the guy is holding a machete. I would never have ever have thought it would occur in the UK. Anyway, I got the bug. I was determined to carry on doing more and more and more, so I worked all around the world for MSF, ICRC, and went to many, many, many countries, working as hard as I possibly could. And you may see 2 things there. You may see Royal Air Force, and again, Royal Air Force. What's a humanitarian surgeon got the Royal Air Force for? Well, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were something quite revolutionary, and things were happening. And if you read things in books, you never remember it, you forget it. But if you actually go there and get the experience, and you can come back and use that experience, I wanted to go and learn. So at a very elderly age, I joined the Royal Air Force, the Royal Auxiliary Air Force, and went out in 2007 to Basra, and then I was the senior surgeon in Camp Bastion in 2010. And I'm really, really glad I did it, because I learned so much. And the only way you learn things is to actually be there, go and do it. And this was me in my uniform with the medical contingent in Basra. At the time, it was really, really dangerous. But what was amazing, if there's anybody in the military here, I take my hats off to you, because the camaraderie is something unique. You really are all brothers in arms, and it's a fantastic thing to be able to be with. But our hospital was constantly being attacked all the time, so that's why all these breeze blocks are there. And if you look at a ground radar picture in 2007, July, you'll see this is Basra Palace, which is being pounded by people with their rocket-propelled grenades. This was a coalition operating base here, where the hospital was, under tents, and we were being pounded all the time by rockets and things like this that had come from militia. This is the alarms would go off, and you're supposed to put body helmets on, body armor, and you'd wait for the rockets to come in. And the noise of that alarm is enough to deter anybody, but I didn't like that bedroom, so I thought I'd change my bedroom. And again, how you survive that is something else when I look back on it all now. And when we were doing ward rounds and things, these rockets would start piling in, and we'd have to pull patients off the beds, cover them up with our body armor and helmets, and things like that. And you can always know the difference between a surgeon and an anaesthetist. When the rockets were coming in, here's the surgeon, and down there's the anaesthetist. But it was very dangerous. It was really dangerous. And funny, now and again, I don't know if you're religious or not, I'm not particularly religious, but every now and again you really feel a calling to do something. I remember getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, needing to go and pray because I think I'm not going to survive this. And so many people didn't survive. You can see all these young people here were being killed on the base at the time. One particular person, again, this is not a particularly pleasant photograph, but we had lots of injuries. All the people that were killed, you always have 3 or 4 times the amount of injuries. And again, this is an injury of somebody who came in with a fragmentation wound. The first thing you do is catastrophic hemorrhage, airway, breathing, circulation, blah, blah, blah. But catastrophic hemorrhage needs a tourniquet put on. So you see this gentleman's got a tourniquet. There's a tourniquet, horrible injury. And unfortunately, he ended up with an amputation. But he ended up becoming, I think, the world's greatest cyclist. He's got the world speed record at the moment, John Allen Butterworth. And this is the same guy who also won a silver medal in the 2012 Olympics and a gold medal in the 2016 Olympics. I went off to Camp Bastion in 2010, and again, it was revolutionary. Revolutionary to see how we dealt with the cases. There was well over 1,000 injured over that time, and we had things like special infusing sets. Everybody was a consultant and well trained, and these were the sort of injuries that were really awful: triple amputations, bilateral amputations, people shot, all sorts of injuries. But the results of the trauma centre at Camp Bastion at the time were the best in the world. If you were ever shot, or if you had stepped on a mine out in the field, you had a 97% chance of survival. It was as good as that. And that's what's been taken back now and brought back to civilian populations. And I was pleased to be one of those members of that sort of team that did all that. And we learnt about triage, damage control, mass transfusion protocols, all these stuff which is now used in the major hospitals in the UK. But let's go back to some humanitarian work. In 2011, I decided, after going to Camp Bastion, that I wanted to go back to the humanitarian. So I resigned my commission, went back to the humanitarian world, and went off to Libya in 2011 when the Gaddafi forces were surrounding. There was no way to get in apart from going on a boat from Malta to Misrata. And so you get the call by MSF, David, we're putting a team together, can you go tomorrow? Yes, let me just sort a few things out. And so there I was on a team. The boat left Valletta Harbour, the captain of the boat required 300,000 euros to take us into a war zone and was paid by MSF to do that. There's a scratch team that you never meet before. You've never met any of these people, apart from Rachel Craven, who is a colleague of mine in Bristol, who does a lot of work for MSF and is really one of those unfound heroes of MSF that really do a wonderful job. So there was me as a surgeon, there was her as an anaesthetist, and there was this other gentleman here who's also a surgeon, and the rest were anaesthetists and nurses and scrub nurses. But he came up to me and said, hi, are you a surgeon? I said, yeah. I said, I want to give you my book. Gave me his book. No regrets, no apologies. So you can imagine what he might have been like, really. Anyway, we went from Valletta Harbour into Misrata by night. In the morning, we were surrounded by these warships, British warships and French warships, escorting this little boat into Misrata Harbour. 15 nautical miles south of the harbour, they left us to go in. And this is typical war zones, Misrata, on fire, going into it. We went into this hospital, which was called Al-Hikma Hospital. And at the time, it had 5 general surgeons, 3 orthopedic surgeons, 1 neurosurgeon, you can read the rest, and around 100 medical students. And it was very interesting. If ever a war always starts, the people that tend to leave are the senior surgeons. So you're left then with a cadre of very young surgeons. And interestingly enough, none of them had had any previous trauma experience. So they're in this situation where there was a massive amount of trauma coming in. And not only that, there was expat support at the time. There were 3 from emergency, 6 surgeons from International Medical Corps, 6 anaesthetists also from International Medical Corps. And they were also phoned. They were phoned up by these aid agencies. And interestingly, they'd agreed to it, but none of them had actually had any trauma experience either. So what do you do as a team that goes in to try and help? Well, you sit tight, you wait for 24 hours. You just don't do anything. You watch what's going on. You don't want to go in there and start saying, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that, or this is how you do it, this is how you don't do it. You just sit tight, wait, watch, don't cause any problems. But what was happening there was, it was out of control. So in the hospital, there were people flooding in a mass casualty event. You need to have 1 person in charge. You need to have the 1 person taking control, stopping relatives coming in, stopping other people coming in. And the triage tent was manned with medical students with wonderful equipment, but nobody really knew how to use it. And not only that, at the time in the triage tent, there were people being operated upon in very difficult circumstances, because you really need to go to an operating theatre with that patient. You need to make a proper incision, not a small incision, with proper suckers and some blood sometimes. But again, this was going on. And not only that, if you have a gunshot wound to the chest, majority of the time, 90% of the time, you can treat a gunshot wound by simply putting a chest drain in. It's simple. But all these patients were sent up to the operating theatre and they had their chests opened and things. And then the real problem is in orthopedic injuries. Orthopedic injuries are infected, they've got bugs and everything else. The last thing you want to do is to put in a piece of metal, because that will get infected, cause osteomyelitis. So there's all these things going wrong, and this is the first 24 hours. People were closing wounds when they shouldn't be left open. And one thing that happened was that changed my mind, said, look, we really need to do something about this, because nobody has any trauma experience. There are all these cases coming in. It's all being done not quite correctly. And this is a gunshot wound to the leg here. Here you can see that the vascular surgeon there did a very good job, actually, and repaired the artery and the vein, but he didn't do it properly. He needs to do a thing called a fasciotomy, where you need to make incisions in the leg to let the muscles expand, because what happens is if you revascularize, you put more blood into a muscle, it will expand. And if it's got surrounded by fascia, which is a very thick, hard organ, if you don't divide that and let the muscles expand, then everything gets very tight, the blood supply goes down, and you'll end up with somebody with a white foot. So I went up to the vascular surgeon and said, you really need to do something about this. You need to do a fasciotomy. And he turned around to me and said, I never do fasciotomies.